please welcome someone who's never afraid, the one and only Seth Meyers! Thank you for coming. Thank you. Mwah. Have a seat, have a seat, have a seat. You know what? It's serendipitous timing for your visit because we are live and the president of Ukraine, President Zelensky, just addressed Congress. And I thought to myself, what does Seth do in this moment? First of all, it was hard for me to come out here. Watching that video that he showed of the atrocity of what many are calling the war crimes that are happening right now. It was hard for me. What does that feel like for you later when you're taping your show?
Well, the nicest thing about having a show like ours is our goal every day is to process the news in a way that's cathartic for us to write about and hopefully cathartic for people to watch later. I mean, there are certain details of what's going on that we don't even touch, right?
Really?
You mentioned the war crime element of it. There's nothing to joke about there, but there are things that will happen over the course of the day where you watch people making extreme suggestions of the best way to deal with this, people in power, people in media who will talk about it in a way that's so ridiculous that that will allow us to poke holes in that. You know, we're not rushing to have a hot take as to the best way to move forward. We're not, you know, geopolitical experts, but we can always point out when people are being absurd. And I think between now and when we tape our show, there will be a lot of absurd reactions.
Absolutely. You know, it's so interesting, too. I was reading a study, and I'm sure you've seen them. There was a recent one, something around 63% of what's called young adults, which we're young adults.
Yeah, of course. You and I, right?
63% of young adults turn to shows like yours for the news. How do you process that? Does that put pressure on you? Do you believe that? What?
Well, I think we're a good second source of the news. Don't get me wrong.
But the study said, I grew up, my dad was in the military. We would sit and watch Peter Jennings. That was our evening thing. But now, people are, they're waiting, they're staying up to see what Seth has to say about the news.
Well, the responsibility that we put on ourselves is to make sure we never get a fact wrong. Like, we try very hard to make sure we do that. No, obviously, we're presenting ourselves as a comedy show, and this is, when people say your show is biased, for example, I don't think it's biased, but I definitely think it's my opinion.
You have a perspective. That's why it's called the Seth Meyers Show.
Yeah, so this is what I think, and people might disagree with it, but it's not like some corporate overlord is telling us what to say. We have the freedom to say our own opinions. So in that regard, I think if people are tuning in and they're tuning in wanting to know what I have to say, they are getting, you know, an accurate bounce on that. But it is good to, you know, I would say to any of those lovely young people who are doing that, you should also read a newspaper.
Read the newspaper. So I'm curious because we both worked at NBC for a long time. And when I got in daytime, people say, well, you're not doing hard news anymore. And I've said to folks, I interviewed Barack Obama and I could do a parfait, and more people will ask me about how you layered that cake.
Yeah.
Because those are the things that we relate to. Sometimes it's overwhelming to process the news. The big news right now is that Rachel Maddow is leaving her daily show. It was reported that Keith Olbermann, who once held the spot, wanted it, didn't get it, whatever. Would you be interested in foregoing the jokes and doing a straight... Why can't you breathe right now?
No, I'm not. I'm not interested at all.
You would never want to replace Rachel Maddow?
Because the joy of it is that ours is the silly take on it, you know? And it's also pretty...
But I've watched you, even though you find the ridiculous in some of the things that people who are responsible should not be saying. I have watched you, though, and being a journalist for so long, I see your back stiffen. And I see you are taking this seriously. And I said to myself, would he take on that role one day of a 1-hour show like a Rachel Maddow show where he forgoes the comedy, even though that's your heart and your roots?
Look, it's really nice that we have this sort of 20 minutes at the top of the show to do that. But the whole time, I know that when it's over, you know, I get to talk to people like, for example, last night, Kid Cudi, and then Quinta Brunson, who I believe is Temple University, right?
Absolutely, Philadelphia. She's been on the show. She's phenomenal.
So for me, you know, we all contain multitudes, and for me, the greatest thing about the show is getting to, you know, show different facets of yourself as a performer and shift over the course of the hour. And I would never want to give that up.
And I don't want to keep. I'm a dog with a bone here. That's me.
Yeah, yeah.
But you're like, yeah.
Someone
like,
has sent you. Someone has sent you to get me to say
no,
yes
no,
to
no.
this.
I swear, no one tells me what to say, unfortunately. But what I was thinking though is somebody who's advised me a lot, Harry Belafonte, who just celebrated his 95th birthday. Happy birthday, Mr. B. That's me and my son Moses with him. I was with Mr. B when I was launching this show, and he talked to me about in 1968 when Johnny Carson personally called him and said, "Can you host the show for what's been called the Forgotten Week?" Because Johnny Carson didn't feel comfortable taking on civil rights and other issues of the day, and he needed Harry Belafonte to come on and be the voice that he couldn't be if he was going to be Nebraska nice. And look at how things have changed. You don't have to call in a second person to make the audience like you or not alienate you from the audience. You get to be all of these things every night.
It's true, but at the same time, you know, not to promote your second guest today, but for example, you know, Amber Ruffin, who's on our show. There are many times on our show where a topic comes up that, yes, I think I could address, but it has so much more weight behind it when it's from Amber's perspective. And very much like the Harry Belafonte week, it wasn't like I, you know, vamoosed for a whole week, but, you know, during the George Floyd week, Amber opened the show every day that week. And I was both as someone who was an audience member in those moments, I was so grateful to be watching Amber tell those stories. And as a host, I was relieved not to be in a situation where I was out over my skis, maybe talking about something that I didn't have the experience to put in the proper perspective.
Well, I thought it was brilliant. And actually, I'll have to be honest with you. You are my favorite in late night because of that. Not just because you said, listen, there's a Black woman here that I can bring in, not as a sidekick, but as a complement to this conversation. I thought when the landscape right now, and you know the ongoing joke that everyone who hosts a late night show is named Jimmy or James, and they're all white men, which people keep saying, why are there only all white men on late night?
Jimmy and James would be terrible names for a Black woman. You know?
That is true. But people keep asking, why are there only white males after 8 p.m.? Does everybody else go home?
Well, I mean, look, I think it's moving in a better direction.
Well, Amber.
Certainly. Amber, I mean, I think, and, you know, I think Jesus and Marrow are doing as inventive and as unique, and talk about a show that could only be done by Jesus and Marrow. Like, that's the key, is when the opportunity arises for people from a different background to do these talk shows, you can't ask them to do it the same way.
Right.
You have to give them
perspective, which is what you're saying about you.
Do it the way not only you want to do it, but the way you would want to watch it if you were at home. And so I think, look, is it happening at the pace it should? Probably not, but it is at least moving in the right direction.
I don't know what pacing is. I don't know what should happen, but I know that you always know when it feels right. And when you and Amber teamed up during that time, it felt right.